Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are the Sun's football editor Charlie Wyatt and the Telegraph football reporter Sam Dean. Good to see you, gents. Welcome along to you both. We'll hear from you shortly. Let's just quickly run you through the back pages as we have them. Back page of the Telegraph looks like this. Arsenal ready to spend big is the headline. Arteta excited about summer as transfer plans revealed. Forwards Isak and Gyökeres amongst the potential targets. Sam's piece, in fact, and also Haaland out for weeks in bloated City. Also, picture there. This is the back page of the Guardian. Not going anywhere. Amrim firm Fernandes will stay to help challenge for titles. So that's the message from the Manchester United manager. And then on the right, Saka ready to go for league return, says an upbeat Arteta. Yes, it's been 100 days since his last appearance because of that hamstring injury. Back page of the Sun. You booty Bukayo, says there at the top. Arteta's massive weapon sack is back. So, yes, Arsenal taking on Fulham, and it could see the return of Bukayo Saka. He's not for sale, is the headline there about those Ruben Amorim comments about Bruno Fernandes. He's staying. We need players like him, says the Portuguese. Back page of the Mirror looks like this. Haaland struck at Erling, faces fight to play again this season after suffering ankle injury in the Cup. Yes, in City's a 2-1 win at Bournemouth. To make the FA Cup semi-finals. He's out for an indefinite period of time. It's a no-go Bruno there on the right-hand side as well. Bruno Fernandes will not be leaving for Real Madrid, says Ruben Amorim. Back page of the Times. There's the headline. Haaland set to miss most of City's season. Striker's injury threatens Champions League hopes. The picture there, we've seen it before actually. Arsenal's wait for Saka is over. And then on top right-hand side, Amorim, I will not sell Bruno. And then a transfer story below it. Milos Kerkez set to cost Liverpool £45 million. OK, welcome once again to Charlie and to Sam. So we're going to start off with Bruno Fernandes. We knew that the papers were going to pick this up. It was in the embargo part of the news conference ahead of the midweek games. So let's have a look, first of all, at the back page of The Sun, which looks like this. So he's not for sale. So this is your paper, Charlie. I mean, just give us a little bit of the context of this story, because he has been linked with a move to other clubs, and particularly Real Madrid. But Ruben Amorim kind of giving this one short shrift in the presser, wasn't he?
Really good, strong words from the Manchester United manager today. And the club's fans will be delighted to hear this, that he's really adamant that their best player is going nowhere. Yes, you're right. There's been talk of a potential move, maybe 80, 90 million pounds to Real Madrid, although I'm not convinced they'd spend that amount of money on the 30-year-old. But look, there'd be lots to take, as of course there will, because he's been Manchester United's best signing in the post-Fergie era, Alex Ferguson, since he left. You could argue that the general competition's not been that good because they've spent a lot of money on a lot of rubbish, overpaid for some really, really average players. And Fernandes is not one of those. Of course, they need him. When he signed a new deal last summer, he did mention that he spoke to the club. He did consider leaving. There were other offers on the table, but he stayed. And of course, Amorim now will be hoping that he sticks it out for another year in that embargoed section today for the newspapers. He does stress that he wants to be winning the title next season. I think that's a bit optimistic, and I think most United fans would agree with that. But yeah, look, his stats alone, 95 goals in 277 appearances, 81 assists. United have to keep him, and I'm sure they're going to do everything they can to do so.
Yeah, I mean, he said, no, it's not going to happen. In fact, the headline in The Guardian, not going anywhere. This piece from Jamie Jackson. Sam, I just sort of wonder how significant is the dynamic of this relationship. Just picking up one of the quotes in Jamie's piece, he says, sometimes the frustration that everybody sees, and they maybe say it's not a good thing in a captain, but it's a sign he wants his success so bad, he's not going anywhere because I've already told him. You know, this axis between manager and captain, particularly at Manchester United, where everything feels like it's constantly in flux, it is, quite crucial, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously Bruno Fernandes is one of the leaders of that team, and there's been a big debate about his leadership over the past few months. I'm sure different people have different views on how good a captain he is, as we know, but fundamentally, Amorim's come in and instantly attached himself to Bruno Fernandes. We know how he's treated other big players, Marcus Rashford, the most obvious example. And he chose, I'm going to side with Bruno Fernandes and basically build my team around him. And he's not the first manager to do that at Man United, which says a lot, I think, about the way that Bruno Fernandes carries himself at the club and his standing and his stature within that squad, and obviously his character and personality too. So, yeah, fundamentally, Bruno Fernandes is a fundamental and key part to this United squad. But I do think it is interesting, though, and I think one thing that is worth mentioning, that United do need to make some sales. We know their financial situation. We know their difficulties with complying with PSR and bringing in the players they want to bring in over the next few windows. And they're going to have to sell someone, really. And obviously, it's not going to be Bruno Fernandes, as Amorim has made very clear here. But you have to look around and think, which players can they generate significant transfer fees for? And as Charlie said before, based on their business in the past few windows, there's not a huge amount of quality options there to sell. So, it's a tricky one. Clearly, it's not going to be Bruno Fernandes, or that's clearly what Amorim wants. He wants him to stay. But you do have to wonder, if not him, then who is going to be sold and how are they going to generate these funds they need to rebuild their squad? Yeah,
it's a really good point, Sam. And I wonder, the back page of the Mirror, it's a no-go Bruno on the right-hand side. They rate him as £50 million. I wonder, Charlie, what's your take on that in terms of what needs to shift around to the Manchester United squad, incomings and outgoings? If they really want to keep him, because he's the captain, he's a talisman as well, and yet they do need to generate funds. So how do they square the circle?
Well, the obvious one's Marcus Rashford, isn't it? He clearly has no future at Manchester United under Amorim. And even today, when he was asked about Rashford's encouraging form for Aston Villa, he said he's a top player if he wants. And he said the same about Anthony, who, of course, they'd be willing to do a deal and for him to stay in Spain as well. So they're the two obvious ones. And, whether they can get the 70, 80 million pounds in total for those two players remains to be seen. But obviously they're going to be hoping that Marcus Rashford can continue his good form at Aston Villa. There's still a lot more to come from him at Villa. That's for sure. It's been encouraging. But yeah, it's not been absolutely brilliant. He needs to score more. But I'm sure Villa would like to keep him, and the supporters want him to stay at Villa Park. So I think that's a key one. And I think it would be a real shame if they lost Kobe Mainu, of course. Brilliant player, potentially. But if United want to progress, they need to be keeping him as well.
OK, let's move on to your piece, Sam. And it is, we were discussing this before, whether to go on Bukayo Saka or whether to go on comments from Mikel Arteta about, their plans for the summer. You've kind of found the perfect solution. You've got a picture of Saka, and then you've got the headline on Arsenal ready to spend big. So well done, everyone at the Telegraph, for that. But in terms of, how significant these declarations were from Mikel Arteta, because, we know that the winter transfer window was so disappointing for Arsenal fans, not being able to sign a striker. They had these issues up front and in those four positions, hence the picture of Saka, because he is finally back, and that is a significant piece of news because there's a little bit of relief in that sense. But, what did you make of his comments and the fact that, he expected this summer's transfer window to be a big one?
Yeah, I think this is the news that Arsenal fans wanted to hear, above all, really. Obviously, the Saka news is big too, but I think we know that's been coming for a while. He was back in training last week, for example. So for us at the Telegraph, we thought the transfer line was the way to go. And I think the reason for that is also partly because it's only 2 days now since Alberta, the new sporting director, arrived. So the business can really kick on now. The man in charge of doing the deals is in the building. He was there at London Colney today. So they can now crack on. And Arsenal fans know where they want to strengthen, where the club wants to strengthen, and that's up front. They tried to do that last summer, couldn't do it. They tried to do it in the January window as well, couldn't do it. So they really can't afford to go 3 consecutive summers without signing a centre forward, especially given that Kai Havertz and Gabriel Jesus are dealing with serious injuries that could affect the start of next season too. So that's clearly got to be the place to go. But the focus will not be just on strikers. And I think it's important to note that they want to sign Martin Zubimendi from Real Sociedad, and he could cost around £50 million. They're also looking at a goalkeeper. I think people in Spain are very much expecting Joan Garcia from Espanyol to go to Arsenal too. So there's plenty of work to be done. And Arteta was quite bold in saying that himself today, calling it a big one in terms of the summer and the window they need. And spoke also about his excitement for getting it done. So I think his front foot is bold, it's aggressive, and it's almost saying to Andrea Berta, here you go and get the deals done, my friend.
Yeah, we'll talk maybe a little bit about the new sporting director that is now in place at the Emirates. But before we do so, the quote from Arteta is, it's going to be a big one, a big summer, and we're very excited about it. What exactly does a big summer look like in terms of cold, hard numbers, Charlie?
Well, they need a striker. As Sam said, the central midfield position looks as though it's sorted, and another keeper. They do need a striker. We know that. It's obvious. Just look at the league table. Just look at Arsenal's form. Obviously, Bukayo Saka has been a big loss. He's going to be back. But even had he been playing the last 3 months, Arsenal have been missing something. And I thought Arsenal would challenge for the title this year based on last season. And I think the fans certainly did. But it's not just a big summer for Arteta in the transfer market. I think it's make or break. It's make or break for him. Because I think if they don't get it right and they're not improving, come September, October, there'll be a lot of pressure on the manager. There's been a bit of pressure from some of the fans now who've been very, very frustrated with him and frustrated with the performances, and it's been a bit flat, isn't it, the last few months there. Obviously, the fact that it's still in the Champions League could still be an amazing season for the club and Arteta. But if that doesn't happen, he has to get the transfer right, has to get the right striker in, and whether they can somehow get Isak from Newcastle, which would be a tough task, or maybe Gyökeres or Sesko from Leipzig. I don't know, but they're going to have to spend a lot of money to get those type of players in. Yeah,
well, I'm going to ask you the same question, Sam. What is a lot of money? Are we talking £200 million? Is it £250 million? Well, give me an idea of what you think Arsenal will need to spend to make this the big transfer window that will get their fans excited.
Well, I certainly think it'd be well over 100. I mean, it's quite hard to gauge what a figure is, and I think fans understandably want to know sort of what a transfer budget is, but that could be affected by a lot of things, including player sales, contract negotiations. For example, they're going to want to tie down William Saliba and Bukayo Saka to new deals, and that won't be cheap. So it's very hard to say they will have X amount of money to spend. But if you consider that Zubimendi is likely to cost around £50 million, and then any striker they go for is likely to cost quite a lot more than £50 million, and you're going well into the hundreds and possibly up to 150, even more. So I think it depends on sales to a degree, depends on contracts. But based on Arteta's comments today and based on what we know they want to do and the players we know they quite like, I think it's fair to expect well north of 100 million, if not 150 million pounds.
Charlie, just coming back on Andrea Berta, who will lead their recruitment efforts in this next transfer window. He's in as a replacement for Edu Gaspar. What do you make of his track record at Atletico Madrid, particularly in terms of forwards that he signed? Because there was an awful lot of money spent, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it's been mixed over the years. I mean, he'll point to Griezmann, which is not a bad one, and Rodri, of course. Then he spent, 108 million on João Felix and Thomas Lemar from Monaco for, I think, 60 million around the time of the Rodri transfer. So it is mixed. And I think Arsenal fans, all eyes are going to be on him. He's started and he's going to be under quite a lot of pressure quite early on. So, he's not going to have an awful lot of time to get it right, I don't think, because it is a really big window. And as Sam was saying, it's probably only 3 players they're going to be able to get in. So they've got to get them right. Sam,
what are your sort of thoughts on Andrea Berta and how much pressure on him particularly? We know there's pressure on Mikel Arteta, as Charlie has said, but what about this new man to try and start the job on the right foot in a critical transfer window?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because a lot of the groundwork has been laid already by the existing recruitment team led by Jason Ato, who served as interim sporting director following Edu's resignation last year. So a lot of the work has been done, a lot of the preparation has been done, and Arteta made that clear today as well, that Berta's coming in to sort of take over existing plans and existing frameworks that are already there. So, for example, it would probably be quite unfair on the existing recruitment team and on Jason Ato if Berta gets all the credit to someone like Zubimendi, for example, But equally, he is now the man in charge. He is the sporting director. His job is to get the deals done. So it's at his door now. Anything they do will be judged sort of through the prism of him doing it. Even a contract renewal that might be already under negotiation, he will now, we expect, take over that or at least supervise it. So it's all going to come to him, and he'll know that. He's dealt with that situation before. And he's obviously as well, I think, an interesting part of his sort of personality and CV is that he worked with a manager in Diego Simeone, who was a very powerful, charismatic guy who kind of built the club in his own image. And I think that's almost exactly the same as Mikel Arteta. So he's used to working with that kind of manager and finding the right tools to get along with them for a long period of time. And I think he'll have to do that again to stay in power at Arsenal and to be successful.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll find out as and when that transfer window opens, first of all, at 1st of June, and then again on 16th of June, see what business Arsenal do. All right, Charlie and Sam, thank you very much indeed for the moment. We're going to take a quick break, other side of which we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Mirror. Haaland. Striker Erling faces fights to play again this season after suffering ankle injury in the FA Cup. How will that help or hope? How will that hinder Man City's chances of qualifying for the Champions League next season? We're back with Sam and with Charlie in a couple of minutes. You are watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to you at home. Welcome back to the Sun's footballer, to Charlie Wyatt, and the Telegraph football reporter, Sam Dean. Right, let's head to the back page of the Mirror, shall we? We showed you it just before the break. Striker Erling Haaland with that ankle injury in their win at Bournemouth. Crucial, not crucial? What do you think, Charlie? How would you sort of assess the importance of this injury to City's season right now?
Well, I don't think sort of City's fans would have been too delighted last night when they saw sort of the pictures of him, limping out of Bournemouth Stadium with a protective boot. So I guess they feared the worst. City are obviously going to be careful. He's going to have more tests. But obviously, where City are at the moment, it's just the FA Cup, isn't it? So, whether he's going to make a recovery in time for the semi-final against Nottingham Forest looks at this stage unlikely. But until he has the test results and has some more treatment, we won't know for sure. But of course, City will be eyeing that game in the course of the final. Potentially Club World Cup in the United States, which is, I think it's pretty obvious that Haaland will be fit for that. And there's not going to be too much of a turnaround in terms of the end of the season. A couple of international games, and then City are going to be off to Miami, where they're going to be based for the Club World Cup. So it could have been a lot worse had City been in the Champions League. But equally, I think they'd rather have Erling Haaland fit and healthy than not. So it is obviously a blow, but again, a chance for Marmoush to start a few more games.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually, on Omar Marmoush. And he, when he has played, he's had impact, hasn't he, Sam? Do you think that softens this blow slightly, or do you think that City are going to be looking over their shoulders? The likes of Newcastle, Brighton, Fulham, Villa, Bournemouth, they're only, all within 4 points of City. And, of course, they're lying in that 5th place right now.
Yeah, I think they need to be looking over their shoulders now. It's certainly not wrapped up, this Champions League place. And you look at the way they played without Haaland against Real Madrid a few weeks ago and against Liverpool, and they offered nothing really. They're really poor, and they went out of Champions League in a very limp fashion and struggled at home to Liverpool. So that will be alarming for Pep Guardiola, I'm sure. You mentioned Marmoush. I think Charlie's spot on in saying that's obviously a good chance for him now. I think they'll be extremely thankful that they made that move in January and didn't wait till the summer to buy a striker, because they're going to need Marmoush's goals now too. And I just wonder if Marmoush is now going to play up front, might that just give a chance to Jack Grealish to play a few games and to get a little bit of momentum and rhythm going that he's obviously not had for quite a long time. So potentially a chance for Grealish or perhaps someone else. But you'd look at Marmoush first and foremost as the guy to fill the void, I think.
Let's move on to some transfer news and looking in the Times and a line here on Milos Kerkez. We know that he's a player of great talent. You can see there on the right-hand side towards bottom, Kerkez to cost Liverpool £45 million. Charlie, how do you see him potentially contributing to what Arne Slot is already creating at Liverpool, and potentially in that fullback role that we've seen both Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson fulfil so brilliantly over the last few years?
Well, I think it's going to be an intriguing summer at Liverpool because, of course, Arne Slot has done unbelievably well without barely having made any summer signings last year. Of course, they're bringing over a keeper in the summer. That is why potentially Liverpool may have been interested in having Kelleher as part of a deal with Bournemouth. But I don't think Bournemouth are interested. Yeah, I think left back is clearly one area where Liverpool look to strengthen. Andy Robertson has been, a brilliant signing for Liverpool over all these seasons since he arrived from Hull. But he's not had the best season. I don't think Kostas Tsimikas is probably a long-term solution. So that is one area. And of course, Liverpool will be potentially looking elsewhere as well in terms of the situations with Salah and Van Dijk. I still think they'll probably end up staying. But then right back, although they've got Conor Bradley, Trent Alexander-Arnold does look as though he's going to be moving to Spain. So it's going to be a big summer for Liverpool, but equally one they're going to look forward to because, it's been an unbelievable season. Yeah,
does this get Liverpool fans excited? Sam, we were talking about Arsenal fans and, that Mikel Arteta setting it up in that way. But, given what's already there, obviously there's more that's, already at a slightly higher level as to where Arsenal are right now.
Yeah, I think this is an exciting move if they can get this one done. I think anybody who's watched Bournemouth this season would probably agree that Kerkez has been one of their most consistent and exciting performers. He's a really all-action kind of fullback. I think he gets up and down really well. He's got a great kind of feistiness and character about him on the pitch. And he seems like the kind of signing Liverpool made a few years ago when they built that team for Jurgen Klopp, which is taking a young, talented player with huge potential for growth, ideally from within the Premier League, having that experience of English football and making him even better. So, yeah, I agree with Charlie that Robertson's not had a great season, and that seems like an obvious area to strengthen. And the deal for Kerkez, at that price, I think seems pretty reasonable. Obviously, we know Bournemouth's model is to recruit these players and then sell them for profit, a bit like Brighton, but perhaps slightly less data-led. And I think it's a good move for everyone, really, if that can come off. And certainly I'd expect him to do very well at Anfield.
Charlie, got roughly about sort of 45 seconds or so just to deal with Daniel Levy. Back page of the Mirror, right at the top on the right-hand side. I won't put Spurs at risk. Levy hits back at critics. Just after sort of the financial reports have been published, and people get a bit more of an idea of what has been spent where. What do you make of it?
Well, we all know that Tottenham fans are not happy with Daniel Levy. They're not happy, with the entire ownership, and they're obviously very frustrated with Ange Postecoglou. The accusations are that Tottenham don't spend enough, but I think Tottenham fans are more annoyed not with the amount they've spent, because they're third highest net spend. I think it's in terms of the signings they're making and the wages they're paying, but also the players, just the quality of the players they're bringing in. And Daniel Levy has overseen a incredible project, the training ground, the stadium, but in terms of signings, it's not been good enough, and that's why Spurs are where they are at the moment.
OK, right, we'll leave it there. Charlie, Sam, thank you very much indeed, as always, for your company and for your insights. We'll speak to you again soon. If you missed any of the show, another chance to see Back Pages tonight, 1:30. It's also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Join us again Tuesday night. Our guests are David Ornstein and Riyadh Al Samurai.